150 days, 150 Psalms, one verse from each Psalm daily. Welcome to the place where you learn the Bible. I hope you're all doing well. Even today, we're going to meditate Psalm 143. This is a prayer for deliverance and guidance, Psalm of David. So, this Psalm, usually Bible scholars say, there's a possibility that this Psalm was written as David was fleeing Absalom. And the Psalm also gives a hint that David feels that this trouble has come upon him because of the great sin that he committed with Bathsheba, or some great sin that he committed, and he believes that this particular trouble, whatever that he was facing when he penned this psalm, has come upon him because of the sin that he committed. The hint is there in verse 2. Look at verse 2 of Psalm 143. Now it says, "Do not enter into judgment with your servant, for in your sight no man living is righteous." He says, come on, Lord, please don't keep on judging me because of the sin that I committed many years ago, because no one is righteous. Because Nathan told David, maybe David was remembering what prophet Nathan told. What did Nathan say? The sword will not leave your house. The sword will not leave your house. God has removed your sin. God has forgiven you. God will reestablish you. God will rebuild you. But there is one thing that you should know, that the sword will not leave your house. So maybe some problem that David was going through during that time, he was penning this psalm. In that crisis, he was telling God, Lord, yes, Lord, I have sinned, but come on, please don't keep on punishing me for that sin, because no one in this world is righteous. So the first two verses from in this psalm is actually his cry, and verse 3 and 4 is the condition in which he is now. Look at verse 3. "For the enemy has persecuted me, crushed my life, and he has made me dwell in dark places." So maybe he was hiding in some cave or something. And then from verse 5 and 6, the recovery begins. I meditate. I remember the days of old. I meditate your doings. I muse on your words. And then verse 6, "I stretch out my hands to you. My soul longs for you," and all that. And then from verse 7 to verse 12, he prays for his recovery. He wants to be recovered, and he cries out to God so that he will be delivered. It is in this context, at this background, we are going to meditate on our core verse 10. And verse 10, he says this: "Teach me to do your will, and lead your good spirit. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground." So there are two things that David prays. One, teach me, Lord, help me to do your will. Secondly, help me to walk on level ground. And I think these are the two very basic things that we need to do when we bounce back from backsliding. It is everybody falls down, everybody sins. If as David says in verse 2, "No man living is righteous." Isaiah 64 says, "Our righteous deeds are nothing but filthy rags. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." Romans 6:23. Everybody have sinned, but we need to bounce back. Just because we sin, we should not go and die like Judas, but we need to come back to God like Peter. So we need to bounce back. And when we bounce back from our backsliding, these are the two things that we need to do. These are the two things that we need to ask God. Number one, Lord, from now on, teach me, help me to do your will alone. Number two, Lord, let your spirit lead me on level ground. Lead me in the right ground. It is very important to learn to do God's will and to be led by God's Spirit. Let me repeat it again. It is very important for us to learn to do God's will and to be led by God's Spirit. Let this verse 10 be our prayer. Teach me to do your will. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. Even in verse 8, he makes a similar prayer. Teach me the way in which I should walk. Teach me the way in which I should walk. Teach me, Lord, teach me, lead me, so that I don't stumble again. Lead me on level ground, so that I don't stumble again. Let this be our prayer. Let us ask God. Let us learn to do God's will and also to walk with the help of God's Spirit. Stay blessed in Jesus' name.